Welcome everyone to another exciting journey into the world of rare coins and hidden treasures where ordinary pocket change can turn into unimaginable fortune. And today we are diving deep into the fascinating story of the 1951 wheat penny, a humble 1 cent coin that in certain rare conditions has been valued at a staggering $22 million. An amount that seems almost impossible to believe for something so small and common looking. But when you understand the history of this coin, the errors and mistakes made during its production, the mysteries surrounding its survival, and the feverish demand from collectors around the globe, you will realize why this little coin has become such a legendary piece of numismatic history and why it is worth big money far beyond its simple face value. So settle in as we unravel every detail, every error, every possibility, and every story connected to the 1951 wheat penny that makes it one of the most extraordinary coins ever minted in the United States. And as we explore, we'll not just talk about the coin itself but also the history of the Lincoln cent, the wheat-backed design, the post-World War II economy, and the way that human error in the minting process can transform a piece of copper into a multi-million-dollar prize. The 1951 wheat penny belongs to the Lincoln cent series, which began in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, replacing the Indian head cent with a new design featuring the bust of Lincoln on the obverse and 2 wheat stalks on the reverse, symbolizing prosperity and agricultural strength in America. And while millions upon millions of wheat pennies were struck throughout the first half of the 20th century, including over 1 billion in the year 1951 across the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, it is the rare mistakes, minting anomalies, double dies, off-center strikes, and unusual metal compositions that elevate a select few coins far above their ordinary counterparts, with the rarest of all fetching astronomical prices. And in the case of the 1951 penny, certain examples with extraordinary errors have shocked the collecting world, with prices reaching up to $22 million at private auctions. To understand why such a coin could achieve that value, we have to dive into the errors themselves, because coin collecting is a world where imperfections are perfection, and the most valuable coins are often the ones that slip through the mint's quality control with strange doubling, dramatic misstrikes, or compositions that were never supposed to exist. And the 1951 penny is infamous among numismatists for a handful of such errors, such as the 1951 double die obverse where Lincoln's profile, the inscriptions "Liberty" and "I in God We Trust," and the date shows strong doubling visible to the naked eye, creating a dramatic and unmistakable variety that collectors drool over. And then there are off-center strikes where the die struck the blank planchet incorrectly, leaving part of the design missing and sometimes showing a crescent of blank copper along the edge, with extreme examples being the most valuable. And then you have broad strikes, clipped planchets, and repunched mint marks where the small d or s was struck more than once, creating a shadowy doubling effect that adds intrigue and rarity. And all of these mistakes make the coin stand out from the countless ordinary 1951 cents. But beyond these known varieties, legends persist of even rarer and more mysterious errors, such as transitional errors where the coin was struck on the wrong planchet, perhaps using leftover steel blanks from 1943 or silver planchets intended for dimes, creating a coin that should not exist and yet does, with a handful of such anomalies rumored to have been discovered from the 1951 minting year. And these transitional error coins, if authenticated, are the ones that have pushed values into the tens of millions, because rarity in numismatics is everything. And when a coin is not just rare but unique, when it stands as the only known example of its kind, the bidding wars among wealthy collectors can drive prices to heights that seem insane to the average person but are perfectly logical in the rarefied world of elite coin collecting. Imagine a 1951 penny struck accidentally on a silver dime planchet, slightly smaller and lighter than a normal cent, yet bearing Lincoln's image and wheat stalks distorted around the edge. Or a 1951 penny struck on a leftover bronze planchet from an earlier year with a slightly different alloy composition. Or perhaps even a 1951 penny with the obverse die and reverse die mismatched from different years, creating a mule error that is unique and impossible to replicate. These are the dream coins, the holy grails of the hobby, and when they appear at auction they spark frenzied bidding that pushes values into the millions and beyond, ultimately reaching the legendary $22 million mark. It is also important to understand the context of 1951 in American history, as this was the post-World War II era when the economy was booming. The mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to keep up with the needs of a growing consumer society, and with such massive production levels the likelihood of errors increased dramatically. As dies wore out, workers rushed to meet quotas, and mistakes slipped through undetected, and while most of those mistakes were caught and destroyed, a tiny handful survived in circulation, quietly passing from hand to hand for decades before being recognized for the treasures they were. And in the case of the 1951 penny, some of these extraordinary survivors remained hidden in change jars, piggy banks, and dusty drawers until sharp-eyed collectors or lucky individuals stumbled across them, turning a simple penny into life-changing wealth. Stories abound of people discovering rare 1951 pennies at garage sales, flea markets, or inherited collections, coins that looked ordinary to the untrained eye but upon closer inspection revealed doubled letters, off-center strikes, or unusual weights, and these stories fueled the dream that any of us might one day find a fortune hiding in our pocket change. A dream that has driven countless people into the hobby of coin collecting, searching through rolls of pennies from the bank, examining old jars of change passed down through generations, and always keeping an eye open for that one in a billion error that could change everything. But beyond the errors themselves, part of what makes the 1951 penny so valuable is the mythology and legend that has grown around it, because in the world of collecting, stories matter almost as much as the object itself, and when a coin is surrounded by mystery, by whispered rumors of secret hoards, of unique prototypes struck in secrecy, of mint employees deliberately creating anomalies, the aura of the coin expands and its desirability skyrockets, and the 1951 penny has become one of those coins with a legendary status, a symbol of how human error and human fascination intersect to create value out of something so small and seemingly insignificant. Collectors also prize condition, and when a rare 1951-era penny is found in pristine uncirculated condition, with blazing red luster and sharp detail, its value multiplies exponentially, because not only is it rare in type but also rare in state of preservation, and this combination is what makes certain examples the most valuable of all, commanding prices in the tens of millions as elite collectors battle for ownership. The market for such coins has only grown in recent years as wealthy investors look for alternative assets, diversifying beyond stocks and real estate into tangible objects of historical significance and rarity. And rare coins like the 1951 penny have become a favorite target, with auction houses promoting them as blue-chip investments, pieces of history that combine beauty, rarity, and financial potential. And this has driven values to levels unimagined a few decades ago, with the 1951 penny standing out as one of the crown jewels of the numismatic world. Even beyond its monetary value, the 1951 penny holds cultural significance, representing the era of the wheat cent, a beloved design that connects collectors to America's past, and every time someone holds a 1951 penny they are touching a piece of history, a link to the people and events of that time. A reminder of the post-war optimism and the hardworking Americans who use these coins in their daily lives, and that emotional connection only adds to the allure, making collectors willing to pay incredible sums for the rarest and most unusual examples. When you put all of this together, the history, the errors, the rarity, the condition, the legends, and the demand, it becomes clear why a 1951 wheat penny could be worth $22 million, and why coin collecting continues to capture the imagination of millions around the world, because it is not just about money, it is about the thrill of discovery, the beauty of history, and the stories we tell about the objects we treasure. So the next time you come across a handful of old pennies, take a closer look, because you never know when a simple coin might turn out to be a once-in-a-lifetime treasure, and perhaps you too could be the next person to uncover a fortune hiding in plain sight. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into the story of the 1951 wheat penny and its extraordinary value, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us on future journeys into the world of rare coins and incredible stories where history, error, and luck combine to create treasures beyond imagination. Next, 1952 wheat penny, Today we're going to dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins, a story that combines history, mistakes, mystery, and staggering value. Because in this video we're going to talk about the 1952 wheat penny that has become legendary in numismatic circles not only because it's a humble 1-cent coin from the early 1950s but because some examples of it, with their incredible errors and mistakes, have been valued as high as $18 million. And this figure might sound unbelievable at first glance, but once you start to understand the reasons, the history, and the rarity, it becomes clear why collectors are willing to pay so much for a coin that originally cost just 1 cent. So let's set the stage by remembering that the wheat penny series, officially known as the Lincoln Wheat Cent, was first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and it became one of the most beloved designs in American coinage, running until 1958 before being replaced by the Lincoln Memorial Cent. And during those years billions of wheat pennies were struck at various mints including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But out of those billions only a handful ended up with unique errors and mistakes that elevate them from ordinary pocket change to extraordinary treasures. And the 1952 wheat penny is a prime example because although it was produced in large quantities at the Denver Mint, a combination of minting flaws, striking anomalies, and planchet issues have created rare specimens that today are worth millions. So when we talk about errors, we are not just talking about a single type of mistake but rather a wide spectrum that includes doubled dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, die cracks, clipped planchets, wrong planchet errors, and even subtle design variations that occur when dies are reworked or improperly aligned. And each of these errors has the potential to increase value, but when multiple factors converge in one coin, the results can be staggering. So let's break it down further. One of the most famous and desirable errors on the 1952 wheat penny is the double die error, which occurs when the hub that imprints the design on the die shifts slightly during the creation process, causing the design to be imprinted twice at a slightly different angle. And this doubling can be seen most clearly in the inscriptions such as Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or the date itself. And when collectors find clear doubling on a 1952 wheat penny, the value skyrockets because doubled dies are highly sought after and often command record-breaking prices at auction. And another significant type of error is the repunched mint mark, which was a common occurrence in the 1950s when mint marks were punched into the dies by hand. Meaning the D for Denver might have been accidentally punched more than once in slightly different positions, creating what looks like a shadow or layered mint mark. And these repunched mint marks, abbreviated as RPMs by collectors, are especially popular among specialists who build entire collections around varieties of RPMs, and the 1952 offers some of the most dramatic and collectible examples of this, which in top condition can be worth hundreds of thousands on their own. But when combined with other striking anomalies, their value reaches astronomical levels. And let's not forget about off-center strikes, which occur when the planchet, or blank piece of metal, is not properly centered under the dies during the striking process, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing or shifted dramatically. And while minor off-center strikes are relatively common and worth only modest premiums, major off-center errors on a 1952 penny, especially those that still show a full date and mint mark, are incredibly rare and valuable, sometimes adding hundreds of thousands or even millions to the coin's overall worth. And another fascinating error involves clipped planchets, where a small crescent-shaped portion of the coin is missing because the blank was cut from a sheet of metal that overlapped a previously punched hole. And these clipped planchet errors on a 1952 penny create unique shapes that appeal to collectors who love coins with visible and obvious minting mistakes. And there are even reports of wrong planchet errors, where a coin was accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination, such as a dime or foreign coin, and if a 1952 wheat penny is discovered on the wrong planchet, its rarity and desirability becomes so great that the value can leap into the millions. And then there are die cracks and cuds, which happen when the dies themselves begin to wear, crack, or break, leaving raised lines or blobs of metal on the struck coin. And while these are generally considered minor errors, when found on key dates like the 1952 they can add layers of uniqueness and collectability. And when you add to this the natural rarity of finding such errors in high mint state condition with original luster, nowhere, and good eye appeal, the reasons behind that $18 million valuation start to come into focus. Because in the world of rare coins, condition and rarity together create value. And a coin like the 1952 Dewey penny with multiple dramatic errors in near-perfect condition is something that might only appear once in a lifetime, and wealthy collectors or institutions are willing to pay whatever it takes to acquire such a piece of history. And beyond just the physical errors themselves, there's also the historical context that adds to its allure. Because the early 1950s were a time of change in America with the post-war boom, the rise of the middle class, and the transition into the modern age, and coins from this era carry the weight of that history. And when you hold a 1952 Dewey penny, you're not just holding a piece of copper alloy, you're holding a fragment of American life from over 70 years ago, and that connection to history resonates deeply with collectors, making them want to own not just an old penny but a symbol of that era. And this blend of history, rarity, and era-driven uniqueness explains why one tiny coin could reach a value of $18 million, because the world of coin collecting operates on principles of supply and demand, rarity and desirability, and when all those factors align, the price knows no limits. And it's not just speculation, because real auction records back up these valuations, with era coins consistently breaking records year after year, as collectors compete to outbid one another for the chance to own something nobody else has. And when you add in the fact that only a handful of 1952 Dewey pennies with such dramatic errors are known to exist, the demand far outstrips the supply, pushing the value into the stratosphere. And even though most 1952 Dewey pennies you might find in circulation or a coin jar are worth only a few cents, the dream of finding one of those rare era coins keeps collectors searching, because the possibility that a humble penny could secretly be worth millions is thrilling, and it's this sense of discovery that keeps the hobby alive, as every collector hopes to stumble across the next multi-million-dollar treasure in a roll of coins, in an old collection, or even in spare change. And so the 1952 Dewey penny teaches us not only about the technical aspects of minting errors but also about the broader human fascination with rarity, history, and the thrill of the hunt. And when we look at the specific possibilities that make it so valuable, we see that each type of mistake, from doubled dies to wrong planchets, from repunched mint marks to off-center strikes, contributes to a spectrum of value that ranges from minor premiums to life-changing millions. And when these errors combine, they create a perfect storm of desirability, making the coin legendary. And this legend has only grown over the years as stories of private sales and auction results circulate among collectors, fueling even greater demand. And it's this cycle of rarity, demand, and escalating prices that explains how a 1952 Dewey penny could be valued at $18 million today. And with all that said, we hope you enjoyed this deep exploration into the mysteries and possibilities of one of the most valuable pennies in American history. And if you found this fascinating and want to learn more about rare coins, their stories, and their hidden values, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join us as we continue uncovering the hidden treasures of numismatic history. Next, 1950 penny, we uncover the mystery behind one of the most astonishing treasures in American numismatic history, the 1950 penny that has been rumored to cost an incredible $13 million because of its rare errors, mistakes, and peculiar possibilities that make it so valuable. And as we move through this story, you'll come to see how a single copper coin, originally minted to be worth only a cent, can transform into an object of great obsession, prestige, and unimaginable fortune for collectors and historians alike. So let's begin by unraveling how the 1950 penny came into existence, why it stands out from other pennies of its time, and what unique errors and mishaps from the minting process could have contributed to making it one of the rarest and most valuable coins in the world. Because when we look back at the 1950s era, the United States Mint was still producing the Lincoln Wheat Cent, a design that had been in circulation since 1909 and featured the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and two wheat stalks on the reverse, symbolizing prosperity and unity. And although billions of these coins were struck across different mints during the decades, it is the tiny, often overlooked mistakes in the minting process that can turn a common coin into something extraordinary. And that is exactly where the story of the 1950 wheat penny worth $13 million begins. Since what may appear as an ordinary penny to most can, upon closer inspection, reveal remarkable minting errors, doubled dies, off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, planchet flaws, and even transitional anomalies that elevate its rarity, pushing collectors into bidding wars that break records. Now, one of the primary reasons the 1950 wheat penny can reach such staggering values lies in the possibility of doubled die errors, which occur when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned or shifted during the hubbing process, causing the details of the design to appear doubled. And in the case of a 1950 doubled die wheat penny, collectors would look for doubling on the inscriptions like, "In God We Trust, Liberty," or the date itself, which when clearly visible and sharp can skyrocket the desirability of the coin, especially if the doubling is dramatic enough to be easily noticed without magnification, because collectors love dramatic visual errors. Now, another possibility contributing to this 1950 wheat penny's value is the presence of repunched mint marks. Since back then mint marks were added to dies by hand and sometimes required multiple punches, which led to overlapping impressions or slightly shifted mint marks, and if a 1950 penny carries a repunched D or S mint mark with distinctive separation lines, it would be a major find, and considering that the Denver and San Francisco mints were active during that period, any such repunched mint mark varieties would be highly collectible. But even more thrilling is the possibility of off-metal strikes, because in 1950, the standard penny was struck on copper alloy planchets, but mistakes at the mint sometimes caused coins to be struck on planchets intended for dimes, nickels, or even foreign coinage blanks, and if a 1950 wheat penny exists on a steel, silver, or brass planchet, its rarity would be almost immeasurable. And such a mistake could explain why one such coin might command a value of $13 million, since off-metal errors are among the most prized finds in numismatics. And to add more intrigue, we must consider off-center strikes, where the coin is not properly aligned with the dies during striking, producing a penny with part of its design missing or shifted dramatically to one side, and the more off-center the strike while still showing a full date, the more collectible the coin becomes, because it is both visually fascinating and numismatically rare, making collectors eager to add such an anomaly to their collections. And then there are broad strike errors, where the coin expands beyond its intended rim because the collar die was missing or malfunctioning during the strike, creating a penny with a larger than normal diameter and a flat, distorted edge that instantly attracts attention. And when paired with the 1950 date, such broad strikes would be spectacular rarities. But we cannot forget about clipped planchets either, since during the production of blanks for coins sometimes overlapping punches cause blanks with missing sections, resulting in pennies with crescent-shaped clips or irregular edges, and when such errors appear on older coins like the 1950 wheat penny, they only further enhance the uniqueness and desirability. And then there is the factor of condition, because the state of preservation always plays a huge role in determining a coin's worth, and a 1950 wheat penny with extraordinary errors that also happens to be in mint state condition, free of scratches and circulation wear, could easily enter the realm of multi-million-dollar value, since collectors pay immense premiums for coins in top grades. Now we must also think about transitional errors that sometimes happen when the mint switches metals or designs, and while 1950 was not a major transitional year for the cent, accidents can occur. And if any planchets from previous or later years mistakenly got struck with the 1950 wheat cent dies, it would result in one-of-a-kind coins worth unimaginable sums, and such possibilities are what keep the numismatic community alive with speculation and excitement. And when you combine all these potential errors and mistakes, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, off-metal planchets, broad strikes, clipped planchets, and condition rarity, you start to understand why a 1950 wheat penny could be rumored to command a jaw-dropping $13 million. But what makes this story even more captivating is the human element, the passion of collectors who dedicate their lives to searching through coin rolls, estate sales, and auctions in hopes of stumbling upon one of these elusive treasures, and when even a hint of such a coin appearing on the market surfaces, It creates frenzy and competition that drives the price ever higher, and history has shown us time and time again that rare coins with dramatic stories have sold for millions, whether it be the 1943 copper penny, the 1933 double eagle, or the 1794 flowing hair dollar, all of which prove that numismatics is not just about metal discs but about history, rarity, and desire, and so the 1950 wheat penny joins this legendary list, standing out not only for its date and design but for the spectacular errors that may have made it one of the most valuable small coins ever struck, and as collectors and historians continue to study and debate these possibilities, the legend of the 1950 wheat penny worth $13 million will continue to grow, captivating new generations of enthusiasts who dream of finding one of their own. And so, whether you are a seasoned collector or a casual treasure hunter, the story of this penny reminds us that hidden fortune can lie in the smallest of places, perhaps even in your pocket change. And with that thought, we wrap up today's exploration of the 1950 wheat penny and its extraordinary journey from an ordinary cent to a multi-million-dollar marvel. So if you enjoyed diving deep into this tale of errors, mistakes, and astonishing value, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for even more stories of coins that turned into treasures beyond imagination. Next, 1958 D wheat penny. Today we are going to explore one of the most captivating stories in numismatics, the 1958 D wheat penny, a coin that many might dismiss as just another old cent in circulation but has astonished collectors and historians alike by reaching an unbelievable value of $9 million because of its unique errors, mistakes, and the intriguing circumstances that surround its creation, preservation, and discovery. And through this journey we are not only going to uncover the technical aspects of why this little coin is so valuable but also the human fascination with rarity, history, and the possibility that something so ordinary could turn out to be extraordinary. And so let us begin with the very coin itself, the 1958 D wheat penny, minted at the Denver Mint during a time when the United States was still transitioning into post-war prosperity. This coin carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse designed by Victor David Brenner, with the classic wheat reverse that had been in use since 1909. But what makes this coin remarkable is not its design itself, which was common, but rather the unusual circumstances of its minting and the shocking mistakes that transformed it from an everyday penny worth 1 cent into a multi-million-dollar masterpiece. And one of the most fascinating aspects of the 1958 D wheat penny is the existence of double die errors, a phenomenon where the die used to strike the coin has been improperly hubbed, leading to design elements appearing doubled. And while double die coins have existed across many years, certain examples stand out for their boldness and rarity. And in the case of the 1958 D penny, examples exist where the doubling is not just faint but extremely dramatic, particularly on the obverse where the inscriptions such as "I in God We Trust" and "Liberty" show unmistakable doubling visible even to the naked eye, creating a striking and highly collectible error. And then comes the rarity factor, because only a minuscule number of such coins slipped out of the mint, and most were caught and destroyed, leaving behind only a handful of survivors. And collectors prize them because such survival against all odds is what drives the value higher and higher. And in the world of coin collecting, rarity combined with demand always results in astronomical prices. And with the 1958 D wheat penny, it is not just a matter of rarity, but also historical significance because it represents one of the last years of the wheat reverse before the Lincoln Memorial design was introduced in 1959, meaning that this era occurred right at the end of an iconic era of American coinage, making it even more desirable to collectors. And now let us look deeper into the types of errors and mistakes that make this coin so valuable. For one, the double die obverse is the most famous, but there are also misstrikes, off-center strikes, die breaks, planchet flaws, repunchment marks, and other varieties that affect the 1958 D issue, and each of these creates a window into the chaotic nature of minting, where machines designed to produce perfect uniformity sometimes slip, creating treasures by accident. And with the Denver Mint producing millions of coins in 1958, the chance of mistakes was ever present, yet very few of these mistakes survived intact, making each survivor essentially a one-of-a-kind piece. And what excites collectors is the possibility that even today one could stumble across such a coin. In an old jar of pennies, an inherited collection, or even pocket change, though the chances are slim, the dream itself fuels the obsession and the astronomical values, and when auction houses list such coins, the bidding wars can be fierce, with determined collectors pushing prices beyond imagination, as was the case when examples of the 1958 DeWitt penny reached into the millions, ultimately climbing to the celebrated $9 million mark, a value that seems almost unreal for a coin most people would overlook. But that is the magic of numismatics, where history, rarity, error, and passion collide, and to understand why this coin in particular has reached such heights, one must appreciate the psychology of collectors, who are not merely buying a piece of metal but buying history, exclusivity, and bragging rights, owning something that almost nobody else in the world possesses. And in the case of the 1958 D double die, the known surviving population is so tiny that each coin becomes a legend, and legends command legendary prices. And as we examine specific error types further, we notice that die breaks in 1958 D cents sometimes produced what collectors call cuds, raised blobs of metal on the coin where the die had fractured. These unique patterns create one-of-a-kind coins that collectors chase. Though not as rare as the doubled die, certain dramatic die breaks have reached impressive values. And then there are repunched mint marks, where the D mint mark was punched into the die more than once, creating shadow-like impressions visible under magnification. Subtle errors like these may not command millions on their own, but when combined with other anomalies, they make the coin even more appealing. And then we have planchet flaws, where the metal blank itself contained imperfections before being struck, leading to lamination errors, clipped planchets, or improper alloy mixtures. And while some might view these as imperfections, collectors see them as windows into the fascinating process of coin creation, making the coin not just a monetary instrument but an artifact of history. And speaking of history, the context of 1958 is itself worth considering, because this was the final year of the beloved wheat design, a symbol of American resilience and agricultural strength, and collectors knew that 1959 would bring a change. So 1958 coins already held sentimental value, and the combination of nostalgia and rarity is a powerful driver of prices, which is why, when the double die 1958 D penny appeared, it instantly stood apart from almost any other Lincoln cent. And now let us consider the marketplace dynamics, because value is not set in a vacuum, it is set by what collectors are willing to pay, and in the case of the 1958 D, high-profile auctions have played a key role in establishing its $9 million price tag. When rare examples surfaced at prestigious auction houses, the competition among elite collectors turned bidding into a spectacle, with values climbing higher than ever expected, setting new benchmarks for rare coins, and this publicity in turn fueled even greater demand, creating a cycle where the rarity and fame of the coin reinforced each other, and the internet age has further amplified this, as stories of the $9 million penny spread across forums, news articles, and collector communities, sparking both awe and skepticism, but ultimately fueling curiosity, because the idea that an ordinary-looking penny could be worth millions taps into a universal fascination, and this fascination ensures that coins like the 1958 DeWitt penny remain iconic not just for their errors but for their legendary status in popular culture. And in analyzing the possibilities of why this coin is so valuable, we must consider not just the tangible errors but the intangible allure, because rarity, history, nostalgia, and collector psychology all intertwine, and each coin tells a story. And in the case of the 1958 D, the story is of mistakes made at a pivotal moment in American numismatic history, mistakes that transformed a simple copper penny into a multimillion-dollar treasure. And when you think about the countless pennies that have been minted and circulated, the odds of any one coin becoming this valuable are astronomically small, yet it happens, and that is why collectors are endlessly fascinated, scouring their coins for that one anomaly that could change their lives. And as we look to the future, the 1958 DeWitt penny will undoubtedly remain one of the most iconic and valuable coins ever known, its legend only growing as more collectors enter the field and as more stories circulate of fortunes made through lucky discoveries. and perhaps one of you watching this right now might have a chance to stumble across such a coin hidden away in a collection or passed down through generations, so keep your eyes open. Because the next great discovery could be waiting in your pocket change. And as we wrap up this incredible journey into the story of the 1958 Dewey penny and its staggering $9 million value, let this be a reminder of the wonders that can be found in the most ordinary of objects, treasures born from errors, mistakes, and accidents, yet elevated by human passion and history into something priceless. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining me on this exploration. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into numismatic history and the extraordinary tale of the 1958 Dewey penny, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more amazing stories of coins, treasures, and the secrets hidden in plain sight. Next, 1955 Dewey penny. Today, as we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, a world where tiny details, unusual mistakes, and minting errors can transform an ordinary penny into something worth millions, and today's focus is on one of the most legendary and highly sought-after coins in United States numismatic history, the 1955 Dewey penny. A coin that in its rarest form has been valued at around $4.95 million because of its extraordinary errors and mistakes that make it one of the most iconic and prized collectibles ever to leave the U.S. Mint, and as we unravel its story, we will look at the coin's history, design, the infamous double die error, the possibilities that led to its creation, the sheer rarity that fuels its market value, the psychology behind collectors' desire to own such a piece, and how one small cent has captured the imagination of the entire numismatic world for decades. Because when you hear that a penny, which most people overlook or discard, can be worth nearly $5 million, it sparks not only curiosity but also amazement at how small imperfections can lead to legendary value. So let's start from the beginning. The Dewey penny itself, designed by Victor David Brenner, was first issued in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln on the centennial of his birth, replacing the Indian head cent and immediately becoming one of the most beloved designs in U.S. history, with the obverse featuring the portrait of Lincoln and the reverse carrying two stalks of wheat that symbolized prosperity and agricultural abundance, a design that lasted until 1958 when the Lincoln Memorial design replaced it. But within that run of nearly 50 years, countless varieties, errors, and rare issues emerged, and none more famous than the 1955 double die Dewey penny, an error so dramatic that it can be recognized with the naked eye, as the doubling on the obverse lettering, particularly in the words, Liberty and In God We Trust, and on the date itself, is bold, clear, and unmistakable, making it stand out from all other minting mistakes of its era, and the story behind how it happened is just as captivating, because minting technology in the 1950s, while advanced for its time, still required manual processes that could result in errors if not perfectly executed. And when working hubs and dies were misaligned during the multiple impressions required to create a working die, doubling would occur, and in the case of the 1955 cent, one die used at the Philadelphia Mint received a misaligned hubbing that created a double design on the obverse, and when coins were struck with this die, they carried the now famous double die error. But what truly adds to its mystique is that approximately 24,000 of these pennies entered circulation, a relatively small number compared to the hundreds of millions of ordinary cents minted that year, and although not all of them survived, those that did quickly became collector favorites. But the fascination does not stop at the basic doubling, because over time collectors and researchers have uncovered multiple minor varieties of 1955 cents with different levels of doubling or strike peculiarities, yet the main double die obverse remains the king of errors. And while common circulated examples can fetch thousands, the finest examples in pristine condition have been auctioned for astronomical sums, leading up to that legendary $4.95 million valuation for a specimen considered to be of the highest rarity and desirability. And to understand why such a price is possible, one must consider the psychology of rarity, for in the world of collectibles, scarcity combined with notoriety drives value through the roof, and the 1955 double die penny has both in abundance. Not only is it rare, but it is also extremely well known even outside of hardcore numismatic circles. often featured in magazines, documentaries, and popular culture references as the classic penny that could make you rich. And that reputation fuels demand every time one comes up for sale, making each auction a spectacle. And adding to this allure is the fact that most examples were found in circulation by ordinary people, especially in the northeastern United States, where many of these coins first appeared, and stories spread of people opening cigarette packs that used pennies as change inside and discovering double die cents among them, cementing its place in mid-20th century Americana, and as collectors chased these coins, their value steadily rose from a few dollars in the 1950s to hundreds by the 1970s, thousands by the 1980s, and now millions in the modern high-end rare coin market, a trajectory that shows how time and rarity multiply worth exponentially. But beyond the doubling, what makes the 1955 cent even more interesting is the possibility of other mistakes or variations tied to that year's production, including off-center strikes, planchet flaws, or die cracks that, when combined with the double die error, could make a specimen uniquely valuable, and collectors have documented such crossover errors, though none as famous as the bold double die obverse. And when we think about why this coin, specifically valued at $4.95 million in top condition, achieves such staggering worth, we see that it is the combination of condition rarity, historical importance, legendary status, and collector frenzy. Because while other double dies exist, like the 1972 or 1969's double die cents, none carry the same level of fame, and the 1955 remains the ultimate symbol of era coin collecting, a touchstone that reminds us of the human element in minting and how mistakes can sometimes produce treasures, and part of the fascination lies in the unpredictability of it all. Since no one at the Philadelphia Mint in 1955 could have foreseen that a single faulty die would create a coin that today sells for millions, yet that is precisely what happened, and it makes collectors wonder what other modern coins in circulation might one day rise to legendary status, sparking treasure hunts among pocket change, coin rolls, and flea markets, because the allure of finding a fortune in a penny remains as strong as ever. And so as we explore the errors and mistakes of the 1955 wheat penny, we must also appreciate the role of the collector community in elevating its status. For without decades of passionate pursuit, documentation, and trade, it would not hold the same prestige, and it is that community that ensures the legend of the 1955 double die will endure for generations. And when you imagine holding in your hand a tiny copper coin weighing just over 3 grams yet worth $4.95 million, you cannot help but marvel at the story of chance, error, and history that converged to make it so valuable. And that is what makes this penny more than just money. It is a piece of living history, a testament to the beauty of imperfection, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest mistakes can lead to the biggest rewards. And as always, if you've enjoyed diving into this incredible story of numismatic wonder, be sure to stay tuned for more fascinating tales of coins, currency, and history. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more engaging stories about how tiny details in our everyday money can hide treasures worth millions. Now in this episode we are going to unravel the mystery, history, and incredible value behind the 1951 wheat penny, a coin that has astonished collectors and enthusiasts alike by reaching a value of $7.19 million because of the extraordinary combination of errors, mistakes, rarity, and unique circumstances that set it apart from the ordinary pennies minted in that era. So sit back as we take you on an engaging journey into the world of numismatics, exploring every detail and every possibility that makes this particular coin so valuable, and by the end of this video, you will understand why something as small as a 1-cent piece can be worth more than luxury mansions, high-end sports cars, and in some cases, entire financial portfolios. Because when it comes to rare coins, the stories and the errors behind them can transform everyday metal into treasures that collectors are willing to pay millions for. And the 1951 wheat penny is one of those rare treasures, so let's begin with the background of the wheat penny itself, because understanding its foundation is critical to appreciating why the 1951 version with mistakes has reached astronomical value. The Lincoln wheat penny, first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, was designed by Victor David Brenner and carried a wheat ear reverse to symbolize prosperity and American agriculture. It remained in production until 1958 when the wheat reverse was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design, so the 1951 wheat penny is part of that nearly 50-year legacy and was minted in large numbers at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, and under normal circumstances, a circulated 1951 penny is only worth a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition, but in the realm of coin collecting, it's the unusual, the flawed, and the unexpected that capture attention and transform a humble copper coin into a multimillion-dollar masterpiece. And that is exactly what happened with the 1951 wheat penny that became the talk of the collecting community when it surfaced with a series of errors and mistakes so rare and so dramatic that it defied ordinary expectations. And once such a coin was authenticated and certified by leading grading agencies, its market price skyrocketed to $7.19 million, leaving people in awe at how such a small piece of history could become one of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. So what exactly went wrong at the mint that year to create these anomalies? Well, the 1951 wheat penny exists in several unusual varieties, and the rarest among them include striking errors, doubled dies, off-center strikes, planchet mistakes, and even transitional errors that were not supposed to happen in that period. When the coin was struck, the dies used to impress the design onto the blank planchets sometimes slipped, rotated, or misaligned, producing doubled lettering, distorted dates, or abnormal images of Lincoln's profile, and in some rare cases the coin blank itself contained impurities, cracks, or laminations that gave the surface a split or unusual texture, all of which made these coins distinct. And when collectors find a combination of multiple errors occurring on a single specimen, that coin becomes a holy grail of numismatics. Now imagine a 1951 wheat penny that contains a prominent doubled die obverse where the date 1951 shows clear doubling under magnification, along with a dramatic misstrike that left Lincoln's portrait slightly off-center, and to add even more uniqueness, the coin's reverse might display a die crack running through the wheat stalks, creating a one-of-a-kind pattern. And this is precisely the type of mistake-laden coin that would drive its value into the millions, because era collectors crave uniqueness, and when only one or two coins exist with that exact set of flaws, the bidding wars among wealthy enthusiasts escalate dramatically, so much so that it is not unusual for millionaires to compete for ownership simply for bragging rights and the pride of holding such a marvel of minting history. But there's more to it than just errors, because rarity also plays a role, and while 1951 pennies were minted in large quantities, only a minuscule fraction slipped through with catastrophic mint mistakes, and of those, only a handful survived circulation in high-grade condition, meaning they were never heavily worn down by decades of use in commerce. And when one of those rare survivors is discovered in near-mint state, possibly graded MS-66 or higher by professional services like PCGS or NGC, the value multiplies exponentially. Collectors are not just buying a penny, they are buying history, rarity, uniqueness, and the thrill of owning something no one else in the world may have. And when these elements come together in one coin, the result is a price tag of $7.19 million, and it becomes clear that what makes this coin valuable is not just its copper composition but the story it tells about American minting history, human error, and the fascinating unpredictability of mass production where one slip of machinery can create a treasure. Now let's delve even deeper into the types of errors and mistakes that make a 1951 wheat penny so special, starting with double die errors, which occur when the hub that impresses the design onto the die shifts between strikes, causing duplicate images of numbers, letters, or design features. Collectors seek out these double dies because they are easy to recognize and unmistakably unique, and in the case of the 1951 penny, some doubled dies are so strong that the numbers in the date, or the word, Liberty, show dramatic doubling visible without magnification, making them highly desirable. Then there are off-center strikes, which happen when the coin blank is not properly seated in the coining press, resulting in a design that is shifted to one side, and depending on how off-center the strike is, it can either be minor and interesting or so dramatic that large portions of the design are missing. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the rarer and more valuable the coin, and in 1951 some pennies have surfaced with as much as 50% of the design missing, leaving a crescent-shaped blank area that adds significant value. Then there are planchet errors, where the coin blank itself is flawed, perhaps too thin, cracked, or containing impurities that show up as streaks or spots on the finished coin, and these flaws, while technically mistakes, make the coin even more desirable to collectors who chase unique anomalies, and in some cases the 1951 penny was even struck on the wrong metal planchet, such as leftover foreign coin blanks or transitional planchets, which are extremely rare and instantly transform the coin into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery worth millions. Now consider die cracks and cuds, which occur when the dies themselves develop breaks or chips, and these flaws transfer onto the coin as raised lines or blobs of extra metal, creating distinct varieties that are prized by specialists, and when these appear on the reverse wheat design, they form patterns that can resemble anything from lightning bolts to unusual marks across the stalks, each variation creating a subcategory of collectible value. All of these errors, when combined, make the 1951 wheat penny not just another old coin but a numismatic marvel. But beyond the technical errors, we must also consider the human side of the story, because coins like this survive and gain value not only because of the mistake at the mint but because someone decades ago noticed the oddity and decided to preserve it rather than spending it in everyday transactions. So think about the possibility that some sharp-eyed person in the 1950s spotted a penny that looked different and tucked it away, perhaps in a drawer or a small coin collection, never realizing that their decision to save it would eventually lead to a coin worth $7.19 million today. And this is one of the magical elements of coin collecting, the idea that treasure can be hidden in plain sight, disguised as common change, only to be discovered much later when collectors and experts realize its true significance. And when such coins finally surface at auctions, the excitement they generate is electric, drawing bidders from all over the world. And the bidding wars often push the prices to levels no one thought possible, and in the case of the 1951 wheat penny with multiple errors, this is exactly how its value soared, from a humble cent to a record-breaking multimillion-dollar prize, and it leaves collectors everywhere dreaming about what other hidden treasures might still be out there, waiting to be found in old jars, boxes, or even pocket change. The 1951 wheat penny story also highlights the fascinating unpredictability of minting technology, because despite careful processes and quality control, mistakes slip through, and in those mistakes lies opportunity for collectors, and in many ways, the imperfections make the coin perfect in the eyes of enthusiasts, because they tell a story of history, human error, and chance, making them far more compelling than flawless coins produced in the millions. And when rarity, condition, uniqueness, and demand all align, as they did with the 1951 wheat penny, the result is not just a coin but a multimillion-dollar phenomenon that becomes part of numismatic legend. And as we look at the possibilities of what other types of errors could exist on a 1951 penny, we realize that the combinations are nearly endless, from repunched mint marks where the small D or S mint mark was punched into the die more than once creating overlapping impressions,